One of the best things about being a pilot, aside from the nifty leather jacket, is the freedom to go to a bunch of places, many that aren't at all convenient to public transportation. Exotic remote sites that require many hours of driving from airline-served airports often have general aviation airports right nearby. That's the good news. The bad news? Some of these airports might not be quite as cushy as the ones you're used to. In fact, their runways might be much shorter, and they may have airplane-eating obstructions near the ends of the runway. And there you are, an unsuspecting pilot faced with landing and taking off under these conditions. Well, fret not, my friend. There is help. First, before you go, check your pilot's information manual or pilot's operating handbook to make sure you have an adequate performance margin to fly both into and out of that airport. If you decide that the runway can accommodate your Skyhawk safely, especially on takeoff, then you'll want to be able to apply the optimum short field takeoff and landing techniques. So, let's jump into some of the most fun flying you'll ever face, short field takeoff and landing techniques, which the FAA considers maximum performance maneuvers. One of the prime considerations for a short field takeoff is the wind. Now you tell me this doesn't look like an elephant's trunk after he's done eating a whole bag of cheese puffs. Look at that orange hue there. As long as terrain isn't a factor and the runway is level, you'll want to use the runway most closely aligned with the wind. Another important factor is to have the airplane in the proper configuration. On normal takeoffs, you use no flaps, but your Skyhawk short field takeoff checklist recommends 10 degrees of flaps. If you use 10 degrees of flaps, you'll reduce by 10% both your ground roll and the distance required to clear that airplane-eating obstacle at the end of the runway. The short field takeoff distance data in the manual is based on your using that 10-degree flap setting. It says it right there. That distance is also based on your holding the brakes while in position on the runway until you have reached full power output on the engine. This way you aren't using up runway while the engine is getting up to speed. Be careful if the runway has loose rocks or gravel. A stationary power-up can suck up rocks and gravel and really chew up that prop. Watch your fingers. On a short field takeoff, you'll want to lift off at 51 knots. As soon as you lift off, set the nose attitude to climb at the recommended speed of 57 knots and hold that airspeed until the obstacles are cleared. Once you clear the obstacles, lower the nose slightly and accelerate to the best rate of climb speed, VY, which is 79 knots indicated airspeed at sea level. Now be sure to wait until you're above 60 knots indicated airspeed to raise the flaps. There are two common mistakes made when doing short field takeoffs. Number one, forgetting to lower the flaps to 10 degrees. And number two, not holding in position on the runway while the engine gets up to full power. Either of these will make you use more runway than the manual indicates. Now, in a short field landing, the idea is to clear an obstacle, make a smooth transition to the flare, touch down at your intended spot, and get stopped as quickly as possible. The first key for a successful short field landing is to plan your approach. Now, you have to know where the wind is from, and if possible, always land on the runway most closely aligned with the wind. Observe if and where obstacles are, and plan your approach and your touchdown point accordingly. The second key is configuration. No, not yours, the airplane's. As the short field landing checklist states, you want to use full flaps, that's 30 degrees, for the highest drag. Now, flying the proper airspeed is very important when you land on a short field. 62 knots indicated airspeed is the recommended airspeed on final for a short field landing. After the approach obstacles are clear, what you do not want to do is yank the power off and dive for the runway. This is a great way to end up with a really hard landing. Instead, Progressively reduce your power and lower the nose of the airplane as necessary to maintain the approach speed. Touch down with the power off and on the main wheels first. You'll know you're at the right speed if you round out and touch nicely without a float. See, any excess airspeed will cause you to float during the flare, delaying your touchdown until you're further down the runway. Not a good idea if the field is short. If you're too slow, you'll get a hard landing, and all your passengers will have the outlines of their craniums on the headliner of your airplane. Not a good idea either. Immediately after your touchdown, lower the nose wheel and apply heavy braking as required. For maximum brake effectiveness, retract the flaps, hold the control wheel full back, and apply maximum brake pressure without sliding the tires. Retracting the flaps right away gets rid of lift immediately and puts more weight on the main wheels, which makes your braking more effective and helps to keep you from skidding those tires. Holding the control wheel all the way back also puts weight on the main wheels and gives you some aerodynamic braking to help slow you down quickly. The most common error in short field landings is getting too fast. Any extra speed will make you float in the flare and uses up lots of distance. The other common mistake is getting too low on final. If you're having to add more and more power to climb back up to the correct approach path, don't keep fighting it. Just go around and try again. Now, all the speeds we've talked about are based on your Skyhawk being at maximum gross weight. If you're at, say, 10% below maximum gross weight, you can reduce those speeds by about 5% for best performance. And there you have it. All the techniques you'll need to take off and land on a short field runway and let you go to those fun remote places. With a little practice, you're going to love it.